Welcome back, everyone, to the last talk for the afternoon. It's a pleasure to be introducing Michael Delassalle, who's going to tell us about, who's from Lyon, and who's going to tell us about characterizing a vertex transitive graph by a large ball.
Thank you, David. Well, first, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's my first time actually in the UK as a mathematician, so I'm extremely happy to be there. Although I did not complain, I was a bit puzzled by the title of the conference. So I wondered what this is about, and I got to the conclusion that the most suitable thing to talk about was my work with Romain Teixeira. So it's a series of two works. So it's joint with Romain Teixeira, who is also at CNRS but in Orsay. Okay, so the question I'm interested in is a question about graphs. So you consider a Cayley graph of a finitely generated group, and the question is whether you can approximate it by other graphs, whether the Cayley graph can be deformed in the category of graphs. So this is the reason why I think it fits in the theme of the conferences. So it's understand how and when a Cayley graph can be approximated or deformed non-trivially. So for me, a graph, it will always be simple, which means that I do not allow self-loops. So a vertex and an edge joining it is not allowed, and no multiple edges. So I have two vertices. I do not allow that there are more than one edge between these two vertices. I will always assume that it's connected. It's unoriented, and it's also locally finite, meaning that every vertex has a finite number of neighbors, and most of the time it's infinite graphs. So, for example, Cayley graphs. I will be often interested in transitive graphs, which means that the group of isometries or automorphisms of this graph acts transitively on the vertex set. And so I have to give a definition, which in a way puts a topology on the set of all graphs, like this. So if we take X, which is a transitive graph, and R is a real number, an integer, then we say that a graph Y, not necessarily transitive, is R close to X if every ball of radius R in Y is the same as the ball in radius R in X. So if for every Y in Y, the ball in Y of center Y and radius R is isomorphic as a graph, or if you prefer as a metric space, geodesic metric space, to the ball of radius R in X. And here, since the graph is transitive, X is transitive, I do not have to specify which center here I have. Okay, so this gives me a topology. You can, well, I will never need it, but you can obviously generalize this definition when X is not a transitive graph, taking into account that you have lots of possibly different balls that occur. And now the question is, so if X is a Cayley graph, how can it be approximated? by other graphs. So this is a very vague question. So if you want, we want to understand how can approximate. So there are examples which are kind of obvious. So if X is a Cayley graph of some group gamma with respect to a finite generating set S, and if we have a sequence of normal subgroups such that for every G in gamma, G does not belong to Nn for every n large enough, then we have that the Cayley graphs of the quotients, they converge to the Cayley graph of gamma. Okay, so it's in a way, so this is, well, it's the obvious definition. So it says that one way to approximate a Cayley graph in this sense by other graphs is by below. Okay, so this is approximation by below, because well, this Cayley graph is covered by this Cayley graph, so we have a way to approximate the graph by quotients. So you typically, it's particularly interesting when the groups have finite index, and so you are approximating the Cayley graph by finite graphs. Okay, I should have said it clearly that so in a way this notion of convergence looks a bit like Sophic approximation, but the main difference is that first you do not allow any error, so it's not Sophic in that sense, and also the difference in the other direction is that here the graph, there are no labels. Okay, so you forget about the labeling, so it's really it looks a bit like Sophicity, but it's very different. Okay, so one obvious way of approximating a graph is by quotients, by below, and also by above. We can also sometimes approximate a graph by above in the following sense. So if gamma is not finitely presented, so then we can consider the group gamma n, which is the group. Let's say that I take a presentation of gamma but with infinitely many relations, so then I can consider the ball of radius. I can consider the group in which a presentation is given by the words of length less than n that are relators for gamma. So this obviously becomes a finitely presented group because I only have finitely many relations, and it's very easy to show that the Cayley graph also converges to X, but by above this time. We have that gamma n has gamma as a quotient, and also for Cayley graphs you get also graph coverings of gamma by these gamma n's, and so you can also sometimes, when gamma is not finitely presented, you can also approach your Cayley graph from below. And it's S, okay? Gamma, this S is the generating set, and here is the, I have to say that, well, you have the Cayley graph of gamma n with respect to S converges to the Cayley graph of gamma respect to S. So this result for whenever I have a group with a fixed finite generating set, I can have this phenomenon. Yes?
When you discuss Cayley graphs, you never consider labeling?
No. Like, for me, Cayley graph, yes, unlabeled, unoriented, unlabeled, and with no
all convergences and stuff like this, it's just as a graph.
just as a graph, yes. Otherwise, we fall into the questions of sophicity or this kind of stuff, and it's a different story.
But both of those examples do work with labels. Could you give an example which says something about the difference between the labeled case and the non-labeled case? Because both of those.
Yes, I will give, but maybe
Okay.
later,
Later.
if that's okay for you. Okay. So, well, I can give an obvious. You know, if you take two groups that are not isomorphic but which have Cayley graphs which are the same, okay, then you have an obvious example. So this is. You have a constant sequence which converge, but the labels do not coincide. Okay, and so actually there was a more precise question that was asked by Beniamini, Itai Beniamini and Agelo Georgiakopoulos. Which says that, okay, so assume that that the group cannot be approximated by above. So it means that gamma is finitely presented. And the question is, does it imply that x can only be approximated? So the Cayley graphs of x can only be approximated by below. So this was a question. Actually, it has been stated as a conjecture that this should be true, and I will motivate this question by examples and give also some counterexamples to some examples where the answer is no. But before that, I want to give a name to this property. So the definition, we say that a transitive graph is local to global rigid I think this terminology is due to I don't remember if it's due to Beniamini Georgiakopoulos or Beniamini and Ellis. I don't remember, but so a transitive graph is local to global rigid if, well, it's another formulation of the fact that the only way to approximate the graph is from below, okay? If there exists R such that for every other graph which is R close to X, this graph is covered by X, just as again as an unlabeled graph. And so the question is, are Cayley graphs a finitely presented groups local to global rigid? And so maybe I give examples. Examples of local to global rigid graphs. The most obvious example is the regular tree. Okay, and here you can take R equal to 1 because the radius 1 tells us exactly what is the degree of a graph. So if you have a graph which is 1 close to a d-regular tree, it's exactly the same as saying that we have a d-regular graph. And the statement here is just saying that whenever I have a d-regular graph, there is a covering by a d-regular tree. So it's completely obvious. Something that is not obvious, which is due to Beniamini and Ellis, and which was one motivation for the question here, is that the Cayley, the grid ZD. So the usual Cayley graph of ZD is local to global rigid, and actually you can take, this is a bit surprising when you see it at the first time. You can take R equal to 3. So R does not depend on D. So I think it's a bit surprising that you do not need to well, you would expect R to grow linearly as D. That's the first thing you would expect, but actually R equal to 3 is not needed, is enough. Other examples, which was the second motivation of this result, which is due to Georgakopoulos. If is X is a planar one-ended, so of course it's a standing assumption, but I write it anyway, transitive graph. I will give now other examples which are due to Romain and me, which is torsion-free groups of polynomial groups. So it's, of course, it generalizes this result of Beniamini-Ellis, and also torsion-free lattices in a simple real Lie group, real connected Lie group. Also, there are other examples which are also due to Romain and me, which are yes. So I realize that this is not so clear. So every Cayley graph of torsion-free lattices in semi-simple Lie groups, and every Cayley graph of torsion-free groups of polynomial groups are examples of local to global rigid graphs. Also, another example is quasi-trees, the groups which are quasi-isometric graphs which are quasi-isometric to a tree, so generalizing this obvious result. And there are also another class of examples. There are Bruyatitz buildings of for D, which is, well, actually you do not have to, there is no assumption on D, but for F of characteristic 0.
I have a question.
Yes?
On the definition of FGR, does it automatically imply that if you are, I mean, you have some R such that blah blah blah,
Yes.
but if you are much closer, does it imply that the covering has a big injectivity radius?
Yes. Yes, it's abstract nonsense. It's a compacity argument which says that the answer is yes. So yes. Yes?
You haven't told us the R.
Yes, I don't. The R, actually, they are not. The proof is not effective. So we use compactness argument. So in some specific examples, we can get a control on R, but in general, we do not know.
So in the Beniamini-Ellis example, that's really ZD with a fixed generating set?
Yes.
In the grid.
It's the grid. It's the fixed generating set, but if you allow us to lose the control on R, then it's covered by this again. Yes.
If I take like a one vertex triangulation of a manifold, maybe some complicated manifold, and I take like a finite cover, then I mean, must be many situations in which I can kind of recover the manifold from the graph by taking like the flag complex. The only simplices will be the simplices in the original triangulation. So won't I be able to find, I mean, will that be an example? Like the universal cover of that?
I don't know. I have to say, you know, I should not say that, but I'm always a bit afraid when you have manifolds. You know, when you have groups, I'm very happy, and when there is a manifold, I'm always, I'm very often afraid. Okay, and I apologize for that. So these are examples, and so there are many. I will explain. My goal is to give a list of results, list of examples, and then I will explain the proofs, which I hope will enlighten a bit some aspects of the talk. But now I want to give counterexamples. So, oh no, I wanted to give one last example. So it's actually it's an observation which might be interesting also, that every group, every finitely presented group, I have to put a technical assumption with an element of infinite order, has a local to global rigid Cayley graph. So what was important in the statements above was that the results here says that whatever Cayley graph you take, you always have local to global rigid graphs, but this statement says that if you take an arbitrary graph with some small technical assumption, which is certainly not necessary, but it's necessary in the proof, then you can build a Cayley graph which is good in this setting. But on the opposite, there are counterexamples which in some sense also say that some of the hypotheses above are needed. So the first example, I will say again, which is again due to remind me, is SL4Z. So SL4Z has a Cayley graph which is local to global rigid, but by this result it also has a Cayley graph which is local to global rigid. So it's not a quasi-isometry invariant, this property. Also, we have another graph, another group which is very simple. It's a direct product of the free group with two generators by itself by Z mod 2, Z mod 2Z, and this is not local to global rigid, even in a stronger sense, even among transitive graphs. Okay, so not being local to global rigid means that there is a sequence of graphs which are distinct from the graph X and which converge in this sense to this graph.
Just say that lattice in simple real connected Lie groups had
torsion free. Torsion free is extremely important in the.
Torsion free lattice. Okay.
Yes. So that's why this example tells us that the torsion free assumption above is crucial, at least for lattices in simple Lie groups.
What were the generators with SL4Z?
I have no idea.
Oh, but that's very specific. And
yes. My goal, I will give one idea of proof is the proof of this counterexample, and it's unfortunately. Well, I think that I could, with maybe some weeks of effort, write down a generating set, but it would take a long time, and it would certainly be very ugly. Okay, and also last.
Michael, can you say again what's the meaning even among transitive graphs?
Yes, it means that there is a Cayley graph of this group, such that there is a sequence of transitive graphs which are all different from this Cayley graph here, and which still converges in this sense to the graph. Whereas here, the proof only gives us a sequence of graphs, and I don't know whether they are transitive or not.
In this last example, you cannot remove Z.
This is, I think it's open. I don't know, but I think it's open. Yeah. And the last example, which is also part of the argument, was joined with Pierre-Emmanuel Capras, is that there exists a torsion-free lattice in PGL-D of some local field, such that that is not local to global rigid. So this should not be a surprise to most of you, but this is a surprise to me, because for the kind of math that I'm used to work with, when I work with higher rank groups, the field does not matter. And here the field does matter, because this is a very nice local field, but the result that is here is not true, because this is a counterexample. There is a torsion-free lattice in a very nice algebraic group, which is not local to global region. Okay. So that's it for the list of examples, and now I want to give ideas of proof. So actually, for the positive result, we have one result that contains most of the examples above, which is the following theorem, which says that if X is a large scale simply connected, so for example, a Cayley graph of a finitely presented group, and so the important assumption is that if the isometric group of X is not too big, so let's say it's countable, then X is local to global rigid. And actually most of the results here are corollaries of this theorem and of some deep results by other people. So for example, we know that planar one-handed transitive graphs, their isometric group is always at most countable. It's always countable, so it falls into this picture. We also know it's a consequence of a result of Trofimov, which is the locally compact group version of the Gromov's theorem for characterizing the groups with polynomial growth, which says that whenever I have a transitive graph with polynomial growth, then its isometric group, well, has some structure, and if we started from a torsion-free group of polynomial growth, then the isometric group is always countable. And similarly, it's a result of Fuhrmann, here that the same holds for torsion-free lattices in simple D groups, except the ones that are typically the free group in SL2Z. It's a torsion-free lattice in SL2R, but these examples, they are covered by quasi-trees, which is in a way a rather easy. Well, this statement here is rather easy, so you get the remaining part of the last statement here is covered by the case of quasi-trees.
You would really need torsion-free, or without finite numbers of groups is enough?
It's the same. It's the same.
without finite normal.
Normal
subgroup.
subgroup.
Oh, normal. No. Actually, it's exercise. If exercise, take a group with an element of finite order, then it has a Cayley graph which is uncountable. Normal or not? Okay. So actually, for a Cayley graph to for a group, the property that all its Cayley graphs have countable isometric group, this is a property that implies that the group is torsion free. And so this is the reason why we need the torsion free assumption above there. And actually there is a question that we have worked quite a lot about it with Romain, and we did not answer, is what about torsion general groups of polynomial growth. We suspect, at least at some point, we suspected that if we take arbitrary groups with polynomial growth, also as I explained, the theorem cannot be applied. We expected that the all its Cayley graph should be local to global region, but we don't know.
So you can replace the first hypothesis by that question.
Sorry?
You can replace the first hypothesis by that question, is that right?
The first large scale simply connected? No.
Yeah, so if you have the group of polynomial grade,
Yes.
and the isometry group is countable.
Yes, actually any group with polynomial growth is large scale simply connected. Actually, every group with polynomial growth is finitely presented. So the question is really there are some. So I should explain you. For example, z times z mod 2z. I will draw you the Cayley graph which has a big isometric group. So just say, so z times z mod 2z is the copy of two lines, and the Cayley graph that I take is this one. Okay, so here on this Cayley graph, for every element of z, you can permute as you want each coordinate like this, and you get an uncountable. You have uncountable many choices of where you permute, and this gives you an uncountable number of isometries of the Cayley graph. So this is just to explain when you have a finite subgroup, how you can perform this, how you can construct the graph. Okay. And the idea maybe it's the idea of this proof. I can give you orally because it's not so complicated. Saying that the isometric group is countable is the same as saying that the vertex stabilizers, they are finite groups. So the group of isometries of the graph which stabilize a given vertex is a finite group. So it means that there is a radius such that if I see the restriction of an isometry on this ball, then this uniquely determines the whole isometry of the whole isometry I started with. Okay, so now if I have a graph in which the large balls are the same as the large balls in X, for this large being this number, something that is at least as large as the radius that I just said, it tells me that whenever I have an isometry from this ball, from a ball in Y, well, let's another way. Whenever I have an isometry from the ball of this radius in X to a ball of the same radius in Y, then if I take a point which is a neighbor of the center of this ball in Y, in particular I have an isometry from a ball which is centered by the spray image in Y of a radius 1 less than what the radius I had at the beginning, to some ball of radius 1 less in y. But what I just said was that whenever I have something that is the restriction of an isometry in X, I can extend it uniquely to the whole space. Locally, it tells me exactly that I can extend it when I have an isometry that is defined locally around one vertex, I can extend it locally around every neighbor of this vertex. And then I can go on. I take a neighbor of a neighbor, a neighbor of a neighbor, a neighbor, and so on. And in this sense, we can try to build the covering of y by x. And what saves us is exactly that there is no topological obstruction. That the x is large-scale simply connected, saying that if I take two paths which joins one origin to another vertex in x, the covering, local covering that I choose does not depend on the path I took from one point to the other. So that's the proof of the theorem. And using this deep result we have of Fuhrmann and Trofimov, we get this example. So this was just a sketch. I want to explain more in details how we get counterexamples. Maybe I will focus on these two because these share the same proof, and I will leave the other one to. I will not talk about the other one. The other one is essentially playing with the understanding what are the local fields and using all the work of Tits on Privatis buildings. Okay. So the idea in counterexamples, okay. So if I'm looking for counterexamples to this question, what I'm looking for is a graph which is a Cayley graph of a finitely presented group, for which you can approximate it by other way than below. And I will first explain a very simple example of a graph that you can approximate not by below and also not by above. Well, I want to give an example that is very, very simple, and that's the starting building block of the constructions for SL4Z or for F2 times F2 times Z mod 2Z. So an example. So consider a group, let's call it H. It's a finitely generated group. So it's generated by some, I will call the finite generating set T. And I assume that the second cohomology group of H with values in Z mod 2Z, this is infinite. Okay, so as Alessandra this morning, I do not really like cohomology, but this is the shortest way to say that H has uncountably many different extensions by Z mod 2Z. Okay, so this gives rise of uncountably, well, actually this is a compact group, so either it's finite or it's at least uncountable. So there you get uncountably many extensions by H, so that the kernel is Z mod 2Z. So in particular, whenever I have if I take here the Cayley graph, I can, if I pull it back here, I get uncountably many two coverings of a fixed Cayley graph here. And so in particular, we can approximate the trivial covering, so H times Z mod 2Z, some fixed Cayley graph of H times Z mod 2Z by uncountably many other graphs, but you know here it's not as in this example here by above. Okay, it's by the side. Okay, we are essentially these extensions here. They are you always have two coverings of the same thing. So it's not an extension by above nor by below. It's another way of approximating the Cayley graph of H by some other graphs. Okay, so here what I said is very the sentence that I just said is not correct, as I said, because I exhibited a sequence of graphs which converges to this one, but nothing guarantees that these graphs, which are the Cayley graph of this when we make the element of the second cohomology group vary, that this Cayley graph are all different to the Cayley graph here. Here we don't know. We just say that there is no obvious isomorphism between the Cayley graph here and the Cayley graph that we have here, but maybe there is one, and that's an issue that we will have to overcome at some point. But this is just the basic idea that whenever you have some algebraic assumption on the group, so this assumption is much stronger than just saying that H is not finitely presented. So this I should have said that this implies that H is not finitely presented, but it's stronger formally. And there is an example. An example is H is equal to F2 times F2, which is a theorem of Stallings. Well, I don't know. Well, it's not probably not written in Stallings, but this is.
It's finitely present.
Yes, it's the kernel. It's the kernel of this of the natural thing which sends all generators A, B, A prime, B prime to 1. Okay, so the basic example of a group, of a subgroup of a finitely present, well, no. If you consider the morphism from the free group to Z, which sends the generators to 1, its kernel, it's one of the basic examples of subgroups of, well, it's a basic example of subgroup of infinite index in the free group, so it is not finitely generated. So it's the basic example. And actually, if you take two copies of the free group and you send all the generators to 1, then it's a theorem of Stallings, it's Federation Stallings, they said the kernel is finitely generated but not finitely presented. And actually, if you work a bit more, you can check that this group has the property that it has uncountably many different extensions by Z mod 2Z. And so now we are in a situation. So let's, the F2 times Z mod 2Z is exactly the group that we have here. Okay, so we are in a situation in which we have the situation. We have G. Well, we have some group G0, which is an extension of Z mod 2Z by some an extension of Z by Z mod 2Z, where G contains H as above. Okay, and both groups satisfy this. Okay. The quotient of, if we mod out by Z mod 2Z, then G, what is G0? G is F2 times F2, and as I just said, F2 times F2 contains a finitely generated group with infinite second cohomology group. And the same works for SL4Z. If you consider the quotient to PSL4Z, then you have a copy of F2 times of PSL2Z times PSL2Z, so you have a copy of you have a copy of F2 times F2, and in particular you have a copy of H. Okay, and the idea is to exploit the fact that H can be approximated in many different ways as a graph, to actually extend this approximation to approximations of Cayley graph of G0. Okay, so we have so consider so now consider S a generating set of G such that the intersection of G of H with S, which is equal to T, this generates H. Okay, so we are in a situation where we have a generating set of G such that the restriction generates the subgroup. So in terms of Cayley graph, so if we consider here the Cayley graph of G with respect to S, actually it is partitioned as parallel copies of Cayley graphs of H with respect to T. Okay, and we have some edges that might join these are edges that correspond to the generators that are not in T. Okay, between different copies of H, we are joined by edges that come from this subset of generating set, and inside the red part of the graph, we have the edges that correspond to the elements of H. Okay, and now, as I explained, so we have I will define H0 is the preimage of H. Okay, so if I have above, now as explained, above every copy of H, I have many ways to put a two-covering copy, a two-covering of H. Okay, but for every element in this second cohomology group, I can build, for each of these copies here, I can build some a two-covering of these copies of H. Okay, there are some. So it's here I drew a trivial covering, but it's not trivial. Okay, so here what I drew is as I had done a direct product with Z mod 2Z, but the situation is more complicated. There are some twisting somewhere, and that's exactly what is important. And I want to build out of this. Now I have countably many copies of a fixed graph, which is the Cayley graph of this H tilde. I want to put them together to get a graph which hopefully will look a lot like a Cayley graph of G0, but will not be G0. So what we do is very simple. For every, so if I have two distinct, if I had the blue edge on below, I consider all here these are the preimages. These are the two preimages of this point. These are the two preimages of this point, and since the only reasonable thing to do is to draw all the possible edges between these preimages, because you know the situation. I'm not good at drawing, so I draw just H times Z mod 2Z, but the situation is more complicated. The only thing that you can do is do this, and it's very easy to see that now if you take a sequence of elements here which are more and more, which converges to, so if you take a sequence of extensions of h by z mod 2z, which in the natural topology converges to extension h0, but is not constant, then it's very easy to see that the sequence of graphs that we have here converges to a Cayley graph of G0. The one, okay, and so we are. This is this is very easy, and what remains to be done. So just to summarize, I have explained you how to construct a sequence of graphs which obviously converges to the Cayley graph of G0. But perhaps this sequence is actually, all these graphs are isomorphic to the Cayley graph of G0, we don't know. And the difficult part, which is really where all the work has to be done, is to ensure that this is not true. Namely, that if I take two different extensions like this, then I get two graphs which are not isomorphic as abstract graphs. So, and this is not quite true, but what we're able to show is that the map which sends an extension to the graph is finite to 1. So there are only finitely many different extensions which will give rise to the same group. And the essential argument, I still have 10 minutes, so it's great. So the essential argument, maybe I write it here, is the following fact which looks obvious. And I would be very grateful if somebody could give me an easy proof of the following result, because we struggled a lot. So the main ingredient, this is a variant of the following fact, which says that every group with an element of finite order has a Cayley graph with countable isometry group. So this looks. For a long time I thought that this was an obvious fact, and actually I think I'm not the only one, because if I remember correctly, I've read in a book, in a paper by Gromov, that it also claims that this is obviously true. But while preparing my lecture, I could not find this reference, so maybe it was in my dreams. But this statement looks completely obvious, but we could not find an easy proof. We have and actually it's completely obvious that if you think only a second, that this assumption is not needed. Okay, it should be completely clear that for every infinitely generating group, you can find a finite generating set which yields to a Cayley graph with countable isometric group. Actually, you would expect that you can even have that the only isometries are the translations by the elements of the group. So this cannot be true in full generality, because if you have an abelian group, the inverse is always an isometry of the group. But you would expect that this should be essentially the only obstruction, and for non-abelian group, you should be able to find a Cayley graph in which the isometry group is just the translations. And this is, well, we don't know. So please, I will be happy to have an easy proof of this fact without the unnecessary assumption. And why this fact is needed is exactly because we have to remember the issue if we are trying to prove the theorem, the issue is that we want to see that if we take for the red two different coverings, then the graphs as a whole are different. So the first step will be to be able to recognize the colors. Okay, on this picture we had some red edges with some blue edges, and the first step is to recognize just from the graph structure. Remember that there are no colorings. We have to recover the coloring, so which amounts is essentially the same. And well, from this you see that you can actually recover the covering map. Okay, we are working just as with the thing above as an abstract graph. And the first step in the proof will be to show that if you are clever enough in the choice of S, then you can recover the colors of the edges and the covering map. So in particular, it tells you that whenever I have an isometry between the graphs above for two different building blocks H tilde, this gives rise, in particular, to isometries of each red copy here. So in particular, it gives you rise to some automorphism group of H, of the Cayley graph of H. And if you know that the automorphism group of the Cayley graph of H is not too big, it has finite vertex stabilizers, this tells you that up to something finite, you can recover the two covering just by the graph structure of the thing that is above. And so that is where we need half of, well, this is one of the steps in which we need to use this fact. We also need it somewhere else, but maybe it's not a good time to enter into these details. And this fact here is also it also gives the proof of this theorem, okay? Because the theorem that was below says that when I have an isometric, a countable isometric group, then you can find a Cayley graph which is local to global rigid, and this is using this fact. And I think I will stop now. Thank you for your attention.
Questions? When you say SL4Z, do you really need the 4?
Yes, this is something that I forgot to say. There are three questions that I wanted to advertise. One is groups with polynomial growth. One is finding an easy proof of this, and the third one was what about SL3Z?
But SL5 is okay?
SL6 is okay. You know, the thing is, I'm 90% sure that SL5 is okay. But you know the trick that you have to model with PSL, well, to go from PSL4 to PSL5 does not work for SL5. So but I'm sure that you can be fixed. But for SL6 it works. Actually, no. Whenever I gave the proof. So whenever you have a group which has a quotient by Z mod 2Z, which contains a copy of F2 times F2, then we are done. And for SL5, I'm very confident that it should work. But now, after 1 hour talk, I'm not able to do that. I should also say, this is something else I forgot, is that sorry, I still have 2 minutes, so I can use them. So here, I did not discuss this even among transitive graphs. So here, you know, for F2 times F2, by definition, this group H is a normal subgroup. The quotient is the kernel of some homomorphism. And whenever H is normal here, whenever H is normal here, then you can check that all the graphs that if you do it carefully, all the graphs that you started with are transitive. So actually, this gives you a way to approximate it by transitive graph. And even, since I said that here you have uncountably many extensions, this gives you uncountably many graphs which are mutually not isomorphic as graphs, but which are all large-scale simply connected. They're all quasi-isometric with a fixed constant of quasi-isometry to a product of 2 trees. So this answers the question that was raised by Yves de Cornillier, which saying that are there more than countably many different large-scale simply connected transitive graphs? And the answer is yes, because I just explained you how to build them. Yes.
Are there other questions? Let's thank Mikhail again. There is wine outside now.